If there was ever a football club that gave the most mixed and contradicting messages, then look no further than West Ham United. After being repeatedly told that we didn't have any money, we're broke, skint, we have to sell players before we buy players, and that if we weren't careful, we would fall foul of PSR rules, all of a sudden, the West Ham board have found a spare £90 million at the bottom of the sofa. It was only the other day that the repeated messages of we're skint started to thaw, with the suggestion that perhaps we might actually be able to start buying players before we have to sell any players. In the knowledge that we were not far away from actually maybe selling players, so we'd actually recoup the money that we spend in order to stay within PSR parameters. So it's gone from that to now there being a suggestion that the board could still stay within PSR rules, even if they invested up to £90 million of their own money. Look, if you're new to the channel or if you've watched the West Ham Voice before but yet to become a subscriber, please do subscribe to the channel. It costs nothing to subscribe. All the content is free. And if you enjoy the video, please make sure you hit the like button and leave your comments after the show. So it was KUMB and then followed up by Sean Whetstone, who kind of gave us the news that the West Ham board could indeed invest their own money. And in an instant, if they did, the whole PSR concerns would simply go away. So why, when we were painted with such a gloomy picture of our financial and PSR situation, why all of a sudden have the board got the perfect solution for all our PSR woes? The simple truth of the matter is this: if you don't need to spend your own money, then why do so? And I think the board simply thought that we were going to sell the likes of Mohamed Kudus in an instant. We would have Lucas Paquetá's FA hearing finished off with the player being found not guilty. So there'll be another 40 odd million pounds plus money to be made there, as well as teams coming begging to sign the likes of Naifa Gerd, Thomas Soucek, and Edson Alvarez. Now, those players alone could could bring in a combined total of something like 180 odd million pounds. But here we are in the second phase of this summer transfer window, and not a sniff, not yet anyway, of any players likely to be sold. And the Graham Potter desire to have new faces in his squad for the start of pre-season training starts in just under 2 weeks' time, is beginning to look in real danger of not happening. So what then? Well, what then will be West Ham again being on the back foot for pre-season preparation and inevitably being at a disadvantage when the season is upon us. The what again and what then is not having learned any of our lessons from previous summer transfer windows. You know, there was a bit of a false dawn last summer when we started to seemingly get a bit of business done early, but then it went quiet, didn't it, before we finished our business off. And look what happened. We ended up having to sort of buy players all at the last minute, all lastminute.com. So we haven't learned our lesson from last season or the season before that or the season before that. You know, instead, the club pleaded poverty or has been pleading poverty, and the vultures have been waiting in silence to grab the players they want from West Ham at probably a much reduced price, because we would end up being so desperate to do business, we'd end up practically giving our vital assets away. But in fairness to West Ham, apart from the big spenders of Man City and Liverpool splashing the cash, 5 Premier League teams haven't bought anyone yet. And I guess in a way you could actually include us. We could be the 6th team if we didn't have to trigger the obligation to buy Jean-Claire Todibo. But if we put him to one side, then it's six Premier League teams at this moment in time that haven't bought any players. But why does West Ham United have to be in that category of a club that has yet to do any business in our transfer window? And with all this cash injection proposal or suggestion, we could have been doing our business right from the very start of the transfer window. All this could have been avoided had the club just did the right thing by investing, or the board investing their own money from the start. But this is West Ham United we're talking about, I guess. So Sean Whetstone went on to suggest how all this money could be, could be utilized, how it could work. And he gave examples of what could be invested and by whom. Now, Premier League owners are permitted to inject up to £90 million over 3 years to count towards PSR. But the last time any money was injected into the club was back in 2021 when Daniel Kretinsky invested into the club. So how do they do it? Well, it'll be achieved by selling additional shares to existing shareholders. This cash injection could be shared equally, with each shareholder paying a percentage, or there could be a rights issue where one or more shareholders injected the cash and the others would have their shareholdings diluted in West Ham. Now, apparently, another insider exclusively told Claret and Hugh last week will inject funds if needed, which will allow us to solve a problem. Why has this been kept all this time? Why has it been the whole issue of we've got no money, and now all of a sudden, out of the blue, we could actually solve our PSR issues if we just injected some money from the shareholders. Now, if any shareholder decided not to inject cash, their current share, as I've said, would be diluted. Now, for example, we've known for some time that Vanessa Gold has been trying to sell off some or all of her shares in West Ham. So the chances of her investing money, especially given that she's got, issues with the Ann Summers empire, etc., currently suffering financially, the idea of her investing money seems rather remote. Kretinsky himself may decide that he too would rather not invest any more of his own money into West Ham because of numerous business and priority interests outside of football. And now the other shareholders, Trip Smith, etc., their shareholdings are quite small. I mean, of course, they could invest more money, and we have heard in the past that Trip Smith was apparently part of a consortium to try and maybe buy into West Ham, but that has all gone quiet as well. Which kind of then leaves it all down to David Sullivan, as he might be one of the few current shareholders who might be in a position to invest money in the club. But yet we keep hearing that David Sullivan is not cash rich. He's got property, etc. His investments are in property. Now we do know he's trying to sell his house in, I don't know, central London for several £1 million. And I don't know, would that be to go towards investing in West Ham? I don't know. Ultimately, if it was just David Sullivan who would invest in the club, to get he would actually end up getting a bigger share of the West Ham ownership. So he currently has 38.8% of ownership. And maybe if he was the one investing, or the only one investing, his shareholdings would actually go up. And that's at a time when everyone is trying to get Sullivan and Brady out of the club. So it's quite intriguing. It seems that we can overcome the whole PSR issue by the club, by the board members investing money, and yet they haven't done that up until now. And why are they doing this now? Well, why might they do it? We don't even know if they will actually do it. There's a suggestion that it can be done to alleviate PSR. And it seems, because of what I've said, it looks as if the board are a little bit surprised that clubs haven't come knocking on the door to buy any of our players. Now, there's talk about Mohamed Kudus. Apparently, Arsenal and Spurs have had exploratory talks with him, and Chelsea have as well. So maybe something might materialize sooner rather than later. But it seems that our transfer window is not likely to really kick off until, I suggested earlier in the week that maybe this would be the week for transfers to start happening. But the week now, we're in Friday, still nothing has happened. So it's looking as if our transfer window is not really going to start in earnest until the beginning of July. Of course, we'll have several players would have left West Ham United, all the players out of contract, etc. Starts freeing up about £2 million in wages, so 24 million over the whole year. And maybe that's when, given that we'll have a little bit of money there, our business will start in earnest. But it's getting quite close, isn't it, to poor old Graham Potter wanting to have a new faces in the squad to start pre-season training. So this is probably why the board have finally suggested that they could invest their own money, because players simply haven't been sold from the club yet. Only at West Ham, of course. I'll be back later on in the day to give you an update on all the latest transfer news, so do watch out for that. But in the meantime, as I've said, if you've enjoyed this show, please do hit the like button. Please become a subscriber and leave your comments. What are your thoughts about the sudden influx of £90 million that the board have found at the bottom of the sofa? Thank you for watching and listening, and I'll see you all soon.